Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 35 team selection where I'm looking at a differential captaincy and also making some slightly more differential decisions with benching as well. If you did enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, jumping straight into this week's video, I am recording this early on Thursday morning, so if I look tired, that's why. But secondly, just to timestamp it, as of me recording this, firstly, the Brentford versus Forest game hasn't been played. Secondly, the Europa League semi-final games haven't been played. And thirdly, we still don't have any announcement about whether there will be doubles or blanks, but we are very much leaning towards believing that there will be no doubles and blanks now in 36 and 37, because you would imagine that the Premier League would have announced them by now. In terms of this week for me, I don't think it changes anything. The player that I'm looking to buy, that a lot of other people are, isn't going to double or blank anyway. And therefore, I don't think in terms of transfers, benching decisions, selling players, it will massively affect what I want to do. So it doesn't really matter for this video. What will be useful, though, is those Europa League semi-final games and also the Nottingham Forest-Brentford game, because that will give us a lot of information around Brian Mbeumo, Wissa, Chris Wood, players that look very good, but also how much we think Spurs and Manchester United might rest in the Premier League as well. With all of that being said, I've currently got one free transfer, 0.2 million in the bank, and this is the way the team currently looks. For me, a lot of the key decisions this week are around benching and captaincy. So I have options for each that I could be like more differential with, maybe take more of a risk. I obviously have the option, like a lot of people, of like doubling up on Arsenal or diversifying the risk. And then when it comes to captaincy, I could play safe. I could go for the captain that a lot of other people are and play the EO game, or I could use this as an opportunity. So we'll discuss that throughout. Starting with the goalkeepers, I do still have Raya in net. There is part of me which is thinking the bookies won't support this, but is Areola against a rotated Spurs side at home that much worse than Raya against Bournemouth? Potentially he is, because listen, West Ham are not a very good defence, and they are right down there at the bottom of the Premier League for good reason. They don't deserve to be much higher. But Arsenal are going to rotate quite a lot, and I would say that as of right now, especially considering how much Spurs will rotate, Bournemouth probably are a better attack than Spurs. So I don't think this is like a dead cert easy one, but just because I've currently actually dropped Saliba to the bench, I probably do want to have at least one Arsenal defender. So Raya is in there as of now. I do expect Arsenal to rotate, but I don't think Raya, Saliba and Kivior will change. So that trio at the back in the centre of the pitch, I think they'll stay. So Raya is in there. And then, as I said, I've actually dropped Saliba to the bench to start Ezri Konsa. If I was to predict how this Aston Villa-Fulham game is going to go, Fulham and Aston Villa both have things to play for, but I think Villa more so. And we know how much Emery wants the Champions League, and it's at Villa Park. I think we'll see an utterly dominant performance from Villa, would be my prediction right now. And I wouldn't say that a clean sheet is that unlikely. Fulham are very good defensively. Across the season, they're like third or fourth for XGC, like really good defence. But they've dropped off a little bit recently, and they've never been a good attack. They've always been bottom half of the table for attacking data. So I do think a chance for a clean sheet is there for Konsa. And I just don't know that I want to back double Arsenal defence when we think that they might rotate 6, 7, 8 of their starting 11. Let me know what you think on that one. I could also do Saliba and Areola rather than Konsa and Raya. But it's not like Saliba, and this is going to be the week that he scores a goal, but it's not like usually he carries that much attacking threat anyway. So I've gone for Raya and Konsa as a double up there. And then Gvardiol and Munoz are my other defenders. These two pick themselves in terms of the other options I've got. Like, I just don't fancy starting Saliba ahead of those two. Both with home fixtures, both with attacking threat. And I actually think both have a small chance for a clean sheet. If you were to ask me now, I probably do predict that both Wolves and Forest score. But City are looking a lot better recently, even defensively, but going forward, I just fancy them to do well in this game. And Nottingham Forest, again, across the season, have never been a great attack. Let's see how they got on against Brentford. If they put 3 or 4 goals past Brentford, then maybe I'll be a little bit less confident. But yeah, I think this defence looks good. I cover the Arsenal clean sheet. I don't have to double up. All 4 of them are playing at home as well. And then Gvardiol and Munoz have some attacking threat too. In terms of like transfers, I would love to use no remaining transfers on the defence. I just think with only 4 free transfers left, is it a wise idea to use one on a defender? Like, which defenders stand out as being nailed, loads of upside and good fixtures? There just isn't. Like, if I was bringing in a defender right now, it'd be O'Brien from Everton, and he could do really well, but I don't want to use one of my 4 remaining transfers on a defender. The only way that I would is if I feel like I need the Bradley spot to be free for a defender. Let's say I could pick up 1 or 2 more injuries, or let's say there are blanks and doubles announced, which I don't expect, but there could be. Then maybe I'll be looking at it as a situation in like game week 37 where I'm like, I need a defender in that Bradley spot that's starting and is fit and available. Now, maybe by that point, Bradley has a chance of starting, but that is the only way I can see myself using a transfer. I would rather field a suboptimal defence and not use a transfer there, because clean sheets have been so unpredictable anyway. You just never know who might get a clean sheet in a given week, and most of the time it's no one. So yeah, that's the defence. No planned transfers, hopefully for the remainder of the season. Let's look at the midfield. So moving on to the midfield 5, and here we get to a lot of the key decisions for this week. In fact, pretty much all of the key decisions this week, outside of maybe just that Konsa versus Saliba decision, they happen in the midfield. So, where should I start? Let's start with the Bukayo Saka position. Everyone seemingly this week is doing Saka to Mbeumo. I don't think that should necessarily massively put you off. Unless you are really, really, really chasing, I do think it is a move which makes a lot of sense. We do not expect Saka to start Bournemouth, although if you maybe do, then keep him. He then plays Liverpool, which isn't a great fixture, even though Liverpool have won the league there. Then it's Newcastle and Southampton. I actually don't mind the Newcastle matchup for him, especially given it's at home. And then Southampton, I would say Saka is the best differential captain for Game Week 38. Barely anyone will own him, because he's expensive, and those that do own him are probably selling this week. And then it would just be difficult to get back to him. So if you can keep Saka, maybe bench him this week, and then have him as a differential captain in Game Week 38, I really think Saka is a fine hold. But Mbeumo could just do so much damage this week against United and next week against Ipswich. And for a lot of us, that is the only real viable route, unless you're planning to do something like sell Salah or take a hit to downgrade a forward and upgrade a midfielder. But at that stage, I think I'd rather just sell Saka. So I do think it is a transfer that makes a lot of sense. Something which I have thought about, though, is let's say I don't want to captain Bryan Mbeumo. I'll discuss captaincy in a second. But something I could do is bench Saka and do Mateta to Wissa. I still get that Brentford attacking coverage. If I'm not going to captain the player anyway, it doesn't matter as much going for Bryan Mbeumo. I still get, if they score goals, you would expect both of them to be involved. I think Mateta is a worse long-term hold than Saka, right? Because they're still in the FA Cup and they've got that final, because they play Liverpool in Game Week 38, and I just think Saka is a better asset than Mateta. Maybe going for Mateta to Wissa is an option instead, but I just don't think, I wouldn't forgive myself if Bryan Mbeumo goes massive across the next few weeks and I was trying to get clever with going for Wissa instead. I think ideally, in an ideal world, you go for Wissa and Bryan Mbeumo. So, yes, if you can just imagine for now, Saka is Mbeumo in the midfield, that is a transfer I'm very likely to make. I will, of course, wait for the game this evening to see how they get on against Forest. I don't think there's anything that would put me off other than maybe picking up a knock or something like that. So, Saka to Mbeumo feels relatively secure. Morgan Rogers is great. I'm very happy to have him. He's playing at home against Fulham, Bournemouth away, Spurs at home, United away. I think as a set of 4 fixtures, they're okay. We talk about motivation a lot, like that seems to be the key word of the week, and I think Rodgers and Aston Villa are about as motivated as you can get. So whilst I don't think Fulham at home is a perfect fixture on paper, they have everything to play for, and we know that Villa are sensational at Villa Park. So Rodgers feels great. At the moment, I've put Ismaila Sarr in instead of Mateta. I would love to know how you feel about this. Now, I know that Sarr is a bit of a troll in FPL, and he's a player that hasn't really returned in the Premier League, so I can understand that probably most people will say, bench Sarr, start Mateta. But when I went through and thought about this, why would I want to start Mateta instead? Well, he's the goal scorer for the team, probably got better XG than a lot of players in this team, so that is one thing. Normally, it would be penalties, and then it would be 90 minutes. Well, the penalties aren't secure now, right? Eze took one when Mateta was on the pitch and missed horrifically. And then in the FA Cup, Mateta took one when Eze was on the pitch and he also missed. So you're looking at 2 players that clearly aren't that confident on pens. Am I that sure that Mateta is first choice penalty taker now? Not completely. I mean, I think he probably will because Eze's penalty was so bad, but I don't know that. Then the second thing is he's just not getting anywhere close to 90. He's been rested in a couple of games. He's coming off at 45 in others, 67 in another one. His minutes just aren't secure at the moment. So if you tell me that Mateta's not secure to get 90, he's not definitely on penalties, Ismaila Sarr's underlying data is always strong. He's normally good for close to 90 minutes as well. And midfielders get the extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet. Ismaila Sarr is also lower owned than Mateta. And I'm 20k at the moment before the Brentford game. And by the way, I've got Brian Mbeumo, so it could get better. I kind of do want to just have a go. Not necessarily for top 10k, but just have a go and just see how high I can get for the final 4 game weeks. So if I want to have a go, and I think Sarr versus Mateta is very, very close, Sarr is around 50% EO at my rank. Mateta's been about 80%. So there is just a slightly lower owned asset there. This is very close, and something which I've tried to do in FPL is own players that I love owning and that I think are good footballers and that I enjoy watching. And Jean-Philippe Mateta is one of my favourite footballers in the Premier League. I've just got a soft spot for him. I love watching him play. Ismaila Sarr is just I don't think he's a bad footballer or anything, but he's just not one of my favourite players in the Premier League. So if we go back to me wanting to own my favourite players, I should probably I should probably put in my starting 11 Jean-Philippe Mateta. This is one of those decisions that I'm just going to have to make on the deadline stream last minute based on gut feeling, vibes, and nothing much else. So let me know what you think on Sarr versus Mateta. If in the press conference Glasner comes out and says something along the lines of Jean-Philippe Mateta is our first choice penalty taker, that might tilt me over the edge. If I have reason to believe that Mateta will take pens, that's probably enough for me to just start the penalty taker. But if I have any doubts or if he says Eze's on pens, I'll start Mateta. I'll leave it there because I realise that's quite a niche decision. Although I think a lot of people probably are deciding bench one of Rodgers, Sarr, Mateta. Rodgers is the least likely to be benched because his minutes are great and I like the fact that it's at home at Villa Park. I think I'll bench one of Sarr or Mateta. So Mohamed Salah will be staying. There are suggestions that you could look to sell him. I actually recorded an FPL Therapy episode this week, which is my new podcast this season, with a Liverpool fan. And he said what a lot of other Liverpool fans are saying, which is it's absolutely nonsense, the idea of Salah being rested. Salah, in his post-winning press conference, on the pitch, he said, I know all about the records. He said that he's chasing the goal involvements. I think he said he needs a goal and or an assist. He knows all about it. He will try and chase and break every record he can. And there's no reason to rest him. Like, what are they resting him for? He's a fitness monster. There's no one really, alternatively, they can play on the right. If they want to give Harvey Elliott minutes, just play him through the centre instead of Szoboszlai. They're going to play Salah every available minute, I'd think. So, is he a captaincy option this week? Always. Doesn't matter who he plays against. But I won't captain him, I don't think, for any of the main... at least for the next 3 weeks, I probably won't be captaining Salah. In Game Week 38, I'll be tempted, but I'm definitely going to be keeping him. So the final player in the starting 11 is Jarrod Bowen. And the first thing to note is just I'm very happy to have Jarrod Bowen. I think he's one of the top 3 players to buy this week, along with Brian Mbeumo and Ollie Watkins. So to have him in place without having to use a transfer, and obviously I've got his points in Game Week 33 as well, very happy to have Jarrod Bowen. He's got my armband still. And if you watch my transfer plans video on Monday, I had the armband on Jarrod Bowen. He's pretty much had the armband for me all week. I did, for one day in the middle, move it to Marmoush. I didn't realise, and thank you to Baker from Above Average for spotting this, but Marmoush hasn't taken barely any set pieces when KDB's been on the pitch. So he's taken 1 corner since KDB's been back in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and KDB's taken 14. He's also not even taking all free kicks either. So he might take the odd free kick, he might take the odd corner, but now you've removed Marmoush's set pieces. The latest news is that Haaland's back in full team training. Now, I don't expect him to take minutes massively off Marmoush at any point, and I probably don't expect him to get many minutes in 35, but if he is on the pitch at any point, he'll also then take penalties. We've also seen that in this current system where Marmoush is playing almost as like a split striker or a little bit wider with KDB as a false 9, Marmoush's baseline bonus has dropped a lot. He makes a lot of fouls, he's offside a lot. I still think Marmoush is great, but a lot of the appeal has dropped recently for me. He's not playing as the 9, as that talismanic player. He's playing as a bit part player in a system. So I still think Marmoush is great, and he's still a captaincy option for me, but I've dropped off a little bit there. We'll discuss Isak in a bit, because I really like Isak. Salah just doesn't excite me, right? If there's a week to go against Salah, you should normally probably take it. And yes, on paper, Brian Mbeumo is objectively probably the best captaincy shout, right? In between Manchester United's 2 Europa League games, he's on penalties, he's on corners, he's on free kicks, he's the second top scoring player this season in FPL. Everything points towards Brian Mbeumo being the best captaincy option, probably on paper. But I still don't think he's the standout captain. And what I mean by standout captain is, some weeks you just look at it and say, this player is obviously the captaincy choice. Like, obviously you go for Isak in the double. Obviously you go for Salah against Leicester at home. As much as I think Mbeumo is probably objectively the best captain, I don't think he is standout enough, clear enough of the others that you don't see this as a week to go against him. And I think if you're chasing, Brian Mbeumo's not the captain. he will be, hands down, amongst the top 100k, the most popular captain. I'm not saying that he will be like 190% EO. It will still probably be low enough that you'll gain from him. But if you're trying to compete with those around you, those engaged managers, I think going against Salah and Mbeumo makes sense. I'm not suggesting you follow me. I don't think that you should if you think he's a great captaincy shout. But for me, if I think he is equally as good as some of the other options, and maybe only slightly clear, I see this as an opportunity to back against him. So when I come back to Jarrod Bowen, if I look at the ownership of all of my attackers, Jarrod Bowen will have the lowest ownership out of all of my attackers this week. So if I also captain him, if he goes big, I am gaining massively. Now, the flip side is that if he does blank, not only is my differential blanked, my captain's also blanked. If Bowen blanks and I captain him, that's game week over. There's no way to get a green arrow because I just don't have enough other options that are lower owned. But again, the flip side is if he goes big, then that is about as big a week as you can get. Why do I like Jarrod Bowen captain? It's the same as the reason that I think Mbeumo is great, right? Spurs will rotate in this game. They've got their 2 Europa League semi-final games either side. And West Ham aren't a great attack, but Jarrod Bowen is brilliant. And actually, West Ham across the last 6 game weeks are top 10 for expected goals. They're not the worst attack in the league. The only thing that I don't like about Jarrod Bowen is he doesn't have pens. I do like to captain penalty takers. Because let's use Bryan Mbeumo as an example. Bryan Mbeumo could drop a generational stinker against Man United, take a corner, take a penalty, and come away with 14 points. It's that simple for players that have multiple routes to points. Now, Jarrod Bowen does take set pieces. He's got a great delivery, but the lack of penalties is always something that puts me off captaining a player. So, if the deadline was now, I would sell Saka to Mbeumo and I'd captain Bowen. If I do move off Bowen captaincy, I don't want you to think this is clickbait. It will just be that my opinion updates, and I'm not afraid to change my opinion. But yeah, as of right now, he's going to get the armband. Let me know what you think of it down below in the comments. I don't mind having a bit of fun with 4 game weeks left to play. Realistically, I'm not going to drop outside the top 100k, and realistically, I probably won't reach top 10k, but I might as well have a little bit of a push. That's a very long midfield section, but hopefully that makes sense. Let's very briefly look at the 2 forwards and then plan ahead for the rest of the season. So guys, then, this is the entire team, and my 2 forwards as of right now are Marmoush and Isak, and as I said, Mateta is on the bench. I wouldn't be surprised if Mateta finds his way back into the 11 before the deadline, and therefore Ismail Assar drops out, but it probably will be one of the 2 Palace boys. In terms of Marmoush and Isak, I think they're fine for this week. I will be all eyes on that Pep press conference, which is probably on Friday, as it usually is. But yeah, all eyes on that press conference, because if Haaland is back and we expect that he could start, I do think that diminishes the appeal. And as I said with Marmoush, actually KDB being there, you would think, KDB with his passing ability makes Marmoush a better option. But he's just dominating a lot of the central positions. He's got a monopoly on the set pieces as well. I just don't see Marmoush as great of an option as of right now than maybe I did 3 or 4 weeks ago. I still think he's great, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes big against Wolves. Him being in the early kickoff as well. I mean, this is the thing. Man City are the early kickoff, so we should get news probably before the deadline about KDB, Haaland, and Marmoush. If we found out that KDB wasn't starting for whatever reason, and I can't see that being the case, I would captain Marmoush, because then he'd be back on set pieces. You'd imagine he's still on penalties, because I don't think Haaland will start. And then he's the main man, probably through the centre of the pitch. Like, if KDB doesn't start, they could play like a false 9 with someone like Grealish or Foden, but I think it will probably be Marmoush playing a little bit more central. So, lots of things to think about there. But for the time being, I don't hate the idea of keeping Marmoush for the next couple. Isak is probably the second most likely captain for me. Brighton have been shipping goals. I think in the last 6 games, they've conceded 2+ goals in every game. So they aren't a team that are keeping teams out. We talk about motivation. Newcastle have everything to play for. Isak's on penalties. Isak has been getting the chances. It's not like he hasn't had the chances. He's just not finishing them. So I think an Isak captaincy shout is really nice. So if I bottle it before the deadline about Jarrod Bowen, but I still don't want to go for an Mbeumo or a Salah, Isak is probably second most likely, then I'd say Marmoush is third. If you were to objectively ask me to rank the captains, it probably is Mbeumo right at the top. But for me, it's probably like Bowen, Isak, Marmoush. The only other thing to discuss with the forwards is I really want Ollie Watkins. Again, I've got a feeling that Villa could do a very nice job 2-3-0 against Fulham. And then they go into a really nice game against Spurs in 37, where I would argue Ollie Watkins might be the best captaincy shout. And then it's Manchester United in game week 38. United are going to have absolutely nothing to play for. Villa will have everything to play for. I could very much see that being a big scoreline as well. So I think Ollie Watkins, especially from game week 37 onwards, is great. I'd love to move early on him. If I do Saka to Mbeumo, there is a world where I thought, is it worth a -4 hit to do Mateta to Watkins? But then I'm taking a -4 hit to do Mateta to Watkins just to bench Ismail Assar. It doesn't feel great when I think Sarr is a perfectly viable option this week. So I think I'll probably have to wait on Ollie Watkins. Wissa is another player I would love to have. If I was on a wildcard this week, I would have Wissa, Watkins, and honestly, I'd be tempted by Chris Wood or Isak. It would probably be Isak. I think if we're looking at motivation, I like the idea of keeping Isak, but I certainly probably wouldn't have Mateta, and I'd be tempted to drop Marmoush as well. There are lots of other good forwards to potentially have for the final four. So that is the team as things stand. Just to recap, key decisions for me this week. Konsa versus Saliba. Saka to Mbeumo will happen. Then it's bench one of Rodgers, Sarr or Mateta. And then captaincy. Those are the key decisions that I'll be making on the deadline stream on Friday, by the way. Friday deadline. Let's now just spend a few minutes looking across the final 4 game weeks at what transfers I could potentially make. So guys, I've just jumped over to Fantasy Football Hub to show you a little bit what that would look like. So here is the team as things stand. Fantasy Football Hub actually recommend Rodgers being on the bench rather than Sarr and Mateta. And I have thought about just going all in on Palace beating Forest. But again, if we're talking motivation, and that is the name of the game at the moment, Palace just aren't going to be as motivated for this game, I don't think, as Nottingham Forest. So that does worry me slightly. So I think, like I said, it'll be something like that as of right now. I've put Brian Mbeumo in. That gives me 2.4 million in the bank. So if that's the transfer, that's the team. For Game Week 36... the team really doesn't look ideal if we don't get doubles, right? And again, it's now Thursday morning. We've still not got anything. I would assume that means no doubles in 36 and no blanks in 37. So let's go on the basis of that for right now. This team looks okay. I don't love Salah against Arsenal at home and then Raya in net. I could potentially, and do you know what? I'd be very tempted to just drop both of my Arsenal defenders, play Areola against Manchester United. He probably has as equally decent chance of a clean sheet. But I guess the back line's not awful, right? I've got my double Man City against Southampton. Triple Crystal Palace against Spurs isn't that bad if we don't expect Palace to rotate. But I have some slight concerns about how much they might rotate here. Jared Bowen against United's great. Do you know what? It's not as bad. And Birmingham against Ipswich, when I actually look at this, it's not terrible. The defence doesn't look ideal, like Konsa against Bournemouth away or Saliba against Liverpool away. I just don't want to use a transfer on defenders. I just don't think that's a sensible thing. The only thing that I could think, actually, is a Nottingham Forest defender for 36, because they've got Leicester. So, yes, maybe Bradley to Milenkovic or Bradley to Nico Williams. Maybe that is a transfer which is worth making in 36. But I just think I'd rather extra transfers for 38. I should note, I think there's a chance, so Man City, the early kickoff for Saturday, I think there's a chance we get early team news for Game Week 36. If we find out Haaland is starting against Southampton, Salah and Marmoush to Haaland and another midfielder will be tempted if you're chasing. So let's just leave it there, because I don't know that he definitely will be. But bringing in Erling Haaland for a Southampton game when a lot of other people won't go there, it's going to be very tempting. 37, all I've done here is I've just put Watkins in for Mateta. Now, Mateta has Wolves at home, but in and around the FA Cup, I just don't know how good their minutes will be, the Crystal Palace players, especially if at this point they can't mathematically get 8th place. And I think Watkins against Spurs at home genuinely might be the best captaincy shout, especially if Rashford is out for that game. If Rashford has a chance of being back, then maybe not. But I just do look at Watkins that week as a player I'd like to own. So if I did that, the rest of the team looks fine. Lots of players playing at home. I think I've only got 2 away players that week. I've got some decent options on the bench, like Ismail Assar against Wolves, Saliba against Newcastle, right? The options are there. That would mean going into Game Week 38, I'd have 2 free transfers. And that's a position I'd like to be in. 1 free transfer is fine, right? You can take a punt, you can have some fun. But 2 gives you some flexibility to upgrade and then downgrade. As of what I would do right now, I've got no idea, because the team actually looks really, really decent. Maybe there is a defender that I'd like to go and opt for. Maybe I go for triple Arsenal defence. Maybe I take out one of my defenders, but I actually look at that defence and it looks okay. I think Eva Nilsson, Clivert, Semenyo for Leicester at home feels great. And then also maybe Bukayo Saka. Maybe, if lots of other people are captaining Salah and I want to do one final chase, maybe I do Salah to Saka in captain. It sounds crazy, but in Game Week 38, you need to do crazy stuff if you're still like 10 points off where you want to be. There are lots of things. Maybe even Marmoush to Eva Nilsson's more of a play, considering Fulham away is not perfect. It will really depend which teams have stuff to play for at that point as well. I'll leave it there then, because, again, it might be that we get doubles and blanks announced and this is all nonsense. It might be that players get injured and then the plan changes. But as of right now, if I switch back to this graphic, this is the team, but putting Mbeumo in for Saka, captaincy up in the air, benching decisions up in the air. Let me know down below what you think on all of that stuff. So guys, there we have it. That is my Game Week 35 team selection. Again, let me know what you think of all of those captaincy benching dilemmas as well. Let me know what your dilemmas are too. There'll be a deadline decisions video on Friday morning. Thank you so much as always for the support. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe as well. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.